Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Ho-ho! Listen, everybody, Jack Black here talking to you guys about the raddest podcast around. The Eggs Podcast is gonna rock your face right to the ground. Ho-ho!
Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, 1 inch tall. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right under Jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. Na, 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 na.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Eggs. Today's guest is a comedian. You're going to have to help me fill in the blanks. I don't want to say things that aren't true, but he's appeared on Last Comic Standing. Yeah. He's opened for a number of touring national acts and things. I actually saw him open for a couple big nationals. And he's an amazing comic, based out of Salt Lake area, and a lot of fun. So let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus is our guest.
Hi, everyone.
And we're just going to kind of kick this thing off. So we had initially thought we'd be talking about a lot of comedy related stuff. However, we found out some new things about you when you walked in about business coaching and things like that. So we have a lot of ground to cover.
It's kind of cool to hear that, because our podcast kind of jumps between bands and CEOs and all sorts of different creative types,
right?
And comedy, and then the fact that you're doing business coaching, that'll actually work with our demographic really well.
Well, and it goes hand in hand so well. I mean, it's amazing how every skill that I've ever learned on a stage can be, applicable to the boardroom or any kind of sales pitch or presentation. It's fascinating. So it's a world that I've been getting into lately over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, and I mean, to your point, I mean, it is a perfect metaphor for business. Like, I mean, just the struggles of being I guess you're playing open mic nights or whatever is your equivalent of trying to get your start out of your mom's garage or whatever. And it's all those steps.
And it's a lot of, it's like comics, we fail publicly constantly, right? Like our practice is getting up in front of a crowd and going, hope this is funny, right? And trying to remove like the ego from the process, if we're just getting right into this. But the whole idea that like I use the open mic metaphor for a lot of the people that I work with. It's like I get to go to open mic, right? And somebody gives me some time. That certain little segment of time, 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever I know as a headlining comic who's built an act, and my act is an hour and a half, however long people need me to fill. I know that this 3 minutes is in service of a greater narrative, right? But it's my choice in the process of what I work on. Because if I go to an open mic as the guy who gets paid to do this, as the guy who makes a living being a comic, and my new jokes aren't funny, and I go up there for 3 minutes and it's just silence, then does my ego kick in and go, oh man, the guy who's doing this for the second time did better than me. I better shoot. What does that say about me? Or does it just say, look, I I had to get out there. I had to try these new things, and then recognizing when something's not ready, or recognizing, removing yourself from the process and going, okay, the audience didn't laugh, but why? It's not on them. It's not me saying like, oh, they were a bad audience. No, okay, why didn't I connect with them?
It's honing in on your product, what you're putting out there.
Right, and your ability to read instantly what your audience is. Like most companies and stuff, people that I work with in the coaching world, like they don't have the ability to sit there and roll something out and hear the instant reactions. Or every time somebody opens a Pepsi and goes, ah, right? They don't hear that. So they have to imagine that through the way that they approach their brand and the way that they approach their marketing and their advertising or whatever it is, right? So what do? A lot of them, in fact, most of the great most of the great speakers, most of the great TED Talks, most of the great memorable things that we connect with the nostalgia of growing up were because there was moments of humor. There were silly little things, right? We can still remember how having to avoid the Noid or the silly, Energizer Bunny. It's stupid, it's silly, but why do we connect with it? Because laughter is an emotional reaction, right? That's the job of a comic, is to stand on a stage in front of a group of people they can't see, a group of people that are not all the same demographic. There's young kids, there's old couples, there's married people, there's single people, people from every race, creed, color, religion, sexual orientation, and make all of them have an emotional reaction to the same thing on command.
Yeah.
That's my job.
That's got to be, I thought my job was tough being a DJ and trying to make everyone happy,
There's a lot of parallels,
But you do, right? What
Yeah.
you do is, as standing up there, if you played your set despite your audience,
It doesn't work.
It doesn't
you,
work.
You have to base it off of the demographic that's in front of you.
And the emotion and the energy that they're giving back to you, right?
Yeah. Oh, I feed off of it. It's
Absolutely you do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just same as a comic, right? Like I have to listen to them. If they're laughing long, let them laugh. If they're having fun with this, great, let's stay here for a second. Let's listen to them, right? We kind of have to remove ourselves. And I think that's one of the coolest things that I've been able to kind of learn with working with these people that I've been working with is that, you come to this realization that, we are all multifaceted. So it's not about like me saying, I know what my act is. I know what kind of comic I am. I know what I'm bringing to the stage and you guys are getting better. No, it's going, look, I'm confident in my skill set. I am over-prepared. If they're asking me to do an hour, I've got 2 in my head. If they're asking me to fill, whatever it is, I've got this. I can do this. I'm aware that this is something that I'm very good at. It's not ego to say that you're good at your skill set.
Mm-hmm.
It's ego to say you're the best, or it's ego to say, nobody's better than that. That's stupid. But to say, no, you put me on a stage with a mic in my hand, I'm going to do a good job.
Yeah.
Like that's me knowing my skill set.
well, that just comes with time served.
Well, yeah,
And
absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, lots to unpack there. So one of the things that I'm really grateful to have discovered is that I'm not the only person that drinks a soda and goes this whole time.
Every time.
I kind of keep it down low. But
I
that's
turn to the
something-
camera and do it. There's not even one there. I'll make sure the name's out and everything. I'm just like,
So, and then the other thing that you just sort of started to get into is this idea of sort of an imposter syndrome, where people have a really hard time just accepting the fact that maybe I'm good at something, or I should be allowed to be okay with that, and they're trying too hard to, justify themselves or not give themselves credit when they should be giving themselves a little bit of credit.
right. Well,
So as a comic, I mean, come on, how do you do that? You guys are all supposed to be self-loathing. You're not supposed to be happy, generally speaking, I don't
Yeah,
think.
right.
So how do you ever get to that point? Is that some enlightenment that you've come across?
I think it's a myth, man. I think that the best comics in the world should be the ones that feel the most. Honestly, I can personally say that, if you ever been to an open mic and you've got 30 dudes up there, most of which are trying this for the first time, it's usually really obvious who's there for the first time.
they usually start with, "This is my first time."
and then they follow that up with the worst, dirtiest things that you could hear. It's the same gross jokes, it's sex stuff, it's this stuff, it's whatever. Why? It's because they think, what's funny? I'm going to talk about that, right? So I'm going to say a funny word. I'm going to do something that is inherently silly. And so that's like one of the things, I could say booger to a 3-year-old kid.
He's going to laugh. I'm going to laugh.
I'm holding back the laugh. I kind of want to laugh.
But it doesn't make me a comic, right? That's a reaction. The best comics, the best comedy, And you guys can probably think about this, right? The things that you can think back on from your childhood, the first time you remember something that made you laugh. Eddie Murphy Delirious for me.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw Eddie Murphy Delirious. I want some ice cream. I want some ice cream. And the goo, you know, all that. Like, I can remember all of that. And it does. It makes you laugh. Why is it that I haven't, you know, you can go 20 years without watching that, but you can access that emotion. It's because you connected to it on a level that was personal. So for me, instead of thinking, what's funny, and talking about that, because ultimately, right, this is another great thing that I think a lot of business leaders and people in well, just about any industry don't think about, is you have to think and act like a headliner. So even when I only had 5 minutes, I had to, like I said, know that 5 minutes is ultimately going to be part of an hour. So I have to think like a headliner at all times and not limit myself to only focusing on 5 minutes and understanding what that 5 minutes means and where it fits. And then that ultimately gives you the ability to go, okay, if I'm going to be on stage for longer, then instead of just talking about BS, why don't I find the stuff I want to talk about and then find the funny in that? So it doesn't matter. And now that's what I've started doing is like people will come to me and go, hey, I have to go up on stage and talk for an hour to insurance companies about me being the doctor for them to send claims to for shoulder and elbow surgeries. That's my specific thing. I got to fill an hour.
Okay, I got 5 minutes.
Right. How do I fill an hour? And then how do I have that emotional check-in, which laughter is that great emotional check-in where you let, you know, your audience lets you know they're listening and that they're attached to your message. So being able to take the humor and find the humor in all of these different things is fascinating. And I don't think that it ever has to be like this self-loathing process. I think a lot of these young comics do that because I guess in order to start, you kind of have to be, you either have to have a very understanding wife or you have to, because I mean, when I started, I was in a comedy club 6 days a week.
Right.
I was at Weiss Guys. See, it was open every day but one when I started. And it doesn't matter if I was on the show, if I was part of the show, I was in the back, I was watching every comic, I was there in case somebody said, in fact, one of the first times I hosted at Weiss Guys, out at the old West Valley Wise Guys by where the Maverick Center, almost the East Center. I'm showing my age.
That's all right. I think we're pretty close in age, so I remember all that stuff
But
too.
we were out there, and there was like 15 comics standing in the back. It was for Harlan Williams. It was a Harlan Williams show. And I was just a young, new comic. And Keith Stubbs, the owner of Wise Guys and probably my greatest mentor, he just walked past, like the music to come on, like that was starting the show. Back in the day, it was the Scatman song. And that meant
Is that the right way?
yeah, and then it would come on, and you knew the show wasn't going to start.
I'm the Scatman.
Yeah, that was it. And I still can't hear that without getting excited because I knew the show was starting. And he walks past this group of comics, like 15 of us, just standing in the back, and he just went, "Marcus, go host."
What?
And I just went, oh, okay. And he went back to the back and said, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm taking off my jacket, standing in the back going, okay, I need to fill 10 minutes. Okay, that joke and then that joke. And okay. And I just went up there going, I know that I have the capability to do at least what he's asking me to do. And I didn't think twice about it. And I just went up there and I did it. And it was funny. I ran into Harlan years later and I had changed my look. I'd cut my hair because I had long hair back in the day. I had a beard back in the day, all this stuff. And he looked at me and went, hey, you're the guy, and you did that joke. And I remember that joke, and it led with the thing. And I went, like, that's amazing, right? Like, there was this incredible, like, you had to be ready. You have to live, like they say, as if, and kind of plan your life that way. And it's awesome. Like, I can't, every time I talk about comedy, I smile. There's no self-loathing about it.
Let's go back to, we kind of like, our show is called Eggs, and what we do is we go over someone's career from like start to current and kind of get the eggs of their career and kind of
sounds good.
Go that way. When did you get into it? Like what time frame was this? Like
I've always been a performer. Like I've done impressions since I was 8. I used to do every cartoon character, every Muppet. I would, if I was role playing or we were doing like some sort of like, you know, we're playing Indiana Jones, you're playing Star Wars, like I would try to do the voices and try to do the lines. And I would entertain my friends. When I got jobs, people were always like, hey, do the next, like do Walken. Be Christopher Walken for the next customer. And they would push me to do these things, right? So, and then I was in a band for a while. So I knew, actually prior to that, hold on, let me go back. So I'd always done that. In 2000, I went to a school for professional wrestling.
what?
Yeah. You're gonna have to talk slower.
I moved to San Antonio, Texas, and I got trained by a guy named Shawn Michaels, the Heart Rate Kid. And when he was retired, I went to his school, and I was one of only two people in my class that graduated. I'm very proud to say that. And I did professional wrestling for a while. Got really hurt, but I always liked the performance aspect of anything that I did. You know, trying to create something, a persona or something
alter
memorable.
ego,
right?
Yeah.
And that was what was great with wrestling. And then a couple years later, I got in a band, and it was really fun to kind of create a mystique and a sound, and I worked with a band. But you know, as bands are, a lot of people you all kind of want to contribute, and not everybody thinks the same way. So eventually that broke up, and in doing the band, I'd met people in radio, and so when the band broke up. And being a frontman, I was always doing little bits in between songs, right? Like I would, again, do voices or whatever. That got me into radio, hanging out, doing an internship with Mick and Alan at K-Bear.
Nice.
And just hanging out for free for about a year and a half, just doing bits, you know, I'll do George Bush, you know. So they would be like, you know, he was in office at the time, so it was real funny. Kind of call in and do him as a character. And I do like, you know, Family Guy, I do these calls in, and, you know, do all these different characters, and it was a lot of fun. And so sometimes, like, there was a time when we were up at Sundance, and I did an entire interview with Matthew McConaughey. And I actually said, like, I was hoping to catch a Jazz game while I was in town. And the Jazz called the station, and were like, we have 2 seats waiting for him if he wants to come down. I was like, they were like, don't tell him. I was like, all right, man, we'll just keep that. We'll just keep that nice and simple. But I would do that around 10. And eventually, I started meeting comics that would come into the station every week to promote their shows, and I would do bits with them or whatever, just be present. And finally, a local guy, John Moyer. I don't know if you know John. He was the writer and director of Mobsters and Mormons, and he's a real good guy, genuine dude. And he said, you need to come in and meet Keith. Come on, just come down this weekend. I'm headlining you. Come down and you meet him. And so he brought me in. He took me into Keith's office, and Keith went, oh, yeah, you're the radio guy that does the voices. Do something. And I just went, okay. And I did some stuff. And he goes, that's funny. Come back Sunday. I'll give you 2 minutes. And I said, cool. And I came back Sunday, and he put me up in front of a road dog. That's what we call people who were touring a lot back then, would just work the road. This guy named Nick Tyson, funny dude. He put me up for 2 minutes, and I told jokes that I had written, and people laughed, and I went, whoa,
this is cool.
It was that, they talk about that moment, right? And I went, ooh, what's this?
The goosebumps.
Yeah, exactly. I knew that I had to do that again. And I got off stage, and Keith said, you know what, that was really good. If you come back Thursday, tell you what, I'll give you 3 more minutes. So I came back Thursday, and then he offered me Friday and Saturday. And then I was there as often as I could, and not only would they give me time, but they'd push me. Like, I remember the assistant manager, John, back in the day, he'd go, you know what, you can come back and do a set tomorrow, but it better be 5 new minutes. And
so you had to go home and work and think about it?
Or think about, you know, okay, yeah, you know, not rest on your laurels, not just go, ooh, I know that joke works, tell it every time. It pushed me, you know, and eventually within 4 months of the first time I stepped on a stage at Weiss, a comedy club stage, and granted I had done other things in the performance world and been a frontman in a band, so I understood the energy and controlling a crowd, but within 4 months of working my tail off, I headlined my very first night. He gave me a Sunday, and I sold that room out just by working and handing out flyers after every show that I opened on. And then forever after that, I was on every show he'd let me. To this day, even though I tour and headline, I still open for people that I want to work with. I still call them up and go, hey, I just did a weekend with Jeremy Piven, and that was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just got to hang out and work with Jeremy and talk with him. My buddy Brian Posehn's coming in right after Thanksgiving, and me and him always work together, so we're just doing the show together. You know, I love that. There is no, I'm a headliner now, so I'm there. No, I want to get up no matter where I'm at in the show, and if I'm going up before a dude, then my job is to make sure he has the best show he can.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Eggs. Today's guest is Jason Treu. Jason is an executive business coach who works with leaders, entrepreneurs, and rising startups to maximize their leadership potential and performance. With more than 60,000 copies sold, he's the best-selling author of Social Wealth, a how-to guide on building extraordinary businesses. Jason also hosts a podcast called The Executive Breakthroughs, where game-changing CEOs, entrepreneurs, and experts are invited to share their breakthroughs and breakdowns. In 2017, Jason was featured at TEDx Wilmington, where he debuted his breakthrough team-building game, Cards Against Mundanity. Jason works with leading organizations such as Google, Amazon, Southwest Airlines, Microsoft, Oracle, and many more. He helps his clients build and execute a career blueprint and teaches them the best methods of improving leadership and management within the business. His ultimate goal for his clients is to build the highest performing teams and most engaged employees. So, without any further ado, please welcome to our show our guest, Jason Treu. Sure. Well, so a couple things on that. So, one of the kind of the trends, I guess, in business these days, not that it hasn't been forever, but is, people's, the power of the MBA, right? That seems to be the thing. Everybody wants their MBA in business and all that stuff. And here you are, somebody coming from a different background entirely. What do you think the value is of the MBA you go get from a school versus the MBA you earn by just jumping in head first like you did?
Well, I think today the reason to get an MBA is a network. And so if you're not going to a school that is going to provide you with a network like Harvard, Stanford, or whatever, you really need to rethink that unless your job requires that to get ahead and you're going to get more money, or there's a specific function that you don't understand that it's going to help you learn and cover. Because I think going and doing things and experiencing and all the free things online today, you can cobble together enough education, and the experience end of the day trumps everything else, because how it works in school is not how it works in the real world.
Exactly.
For instance, when I went to law school, when I went to work as a lawyer and doing something like in the summer and other things, I had to work the exact opposite of what I was doing in school, right? I mean,
Right.
The way I wrote a brief was like 180-degree opposite. So in fact, school didn't help me at all. In fact, it actually hindered me because I thought I actually knew what I was supposed to do. And then I realized I knew nothing. And I had essentially learned it all over again. And I find that way in business too, because the rules that you learn in school are not in the real world. And the people that are teaching those classes are not the people that are CEOs of a company, obviously, because they can't be in two places at one time. And so I find that you just got to get out and do it, and learn and immerse yourself in the information, and then, spend time getting coaching, doing research and testing things as you're doing it. But that's an entrepreneurial journey. I think that's today's business journey.
Yeah. And so, and I guess to your point, this idea of, that you could go online and cobble together some kind of, makeshift MBA. The experience learned and being able to bring on coaching and things like that for specific needs that are addressing problems you're running into in business in any given moment is probably much more valuable than general information that you would pull out of a school.
Yeah, because for instance, stuff I'm doing on team building and performance is not in any college or university.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually back asswards, right? And so they're learning the exact opposite. And so that's the problem. They're not learning self-awareness the right way in, any university setting. In fact, if you look at business networking, it actually is pretty much done incorrectly at every school. When I talk to people about how they're teaching their own MBA students to network, I'm like, that's not how you get to successful people and actually build a relationship with them, right?
Yeah.
And so none of these things are really being taught because, no offense, the people teaching them in general, they aren't experts in this. They aren't mastering the actual experience level thing. They know the research exceptionally well, and they're collecting the data, but they're not on the cutting edge of living it every day.
Yeah, they're not out making the data.
No, yeah. And so, there are exceptions to that.
Sure.
But I don't think is a full breadth of an education. You're going in every semester and, out of every 5-6 classes you have, there's probably one or less teachers that are actually living it, not just talking about it.
No, and I think that's a really interesting insight. Back to the point you made a moment ago about just the value of school could really be that network versus the education you get there, because you've got to go out and learn everything anyway. That's a perspective I hadn't heard before, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think today with college and stuff like that with parents, I really think it is this way. If you're like your son or daughter is not getting in a top 10 school, you really need to think the cost benefit analysis of what they're doing, because the network at Harvard is why you pay for Harvard, not the education, because you're just learning things that you could learn elsewhere. But the people you have access to, you can't get everywhere else. And so that's worth a tremendous amount of money, right? Because that network is right at your fingertips, literally, outside your dorm room and walking around. But if you're going to school that's maybe a really good state school that you're paying or something a lot of money for, you got to really rethink, like, what is it that you're getting out of this, and what's the real benefit on the education and network standpoint versus the cost and debt level that you're going to have and the pressure you are to recoup that, and how employers look at that education today.
Yeah, a lot of it's all portfolio based these days, where if you have a good, if, especially in the tech industry, if you can come out and show the work that you've already done, that says a lot more than necessarily saying, I went to Idaho State University. You got the degree, but, what's it really worth?
And you're seeing also most of those tech and coding schools, half of the education now is in soft skills.
Yeah.
Because they realize that the problem is, from an engineer and a coding person, isn't their skill sets alone, it's their inability to interact, communicate, collaborate, resolve conflicts, be empathetic to people inside the organization from all levels, and from customers and prospects and everywhere else, which is a key piece of your job, right? It's not learning and knowledge itself. It's how do you apply it and engage with other people. So I think that as we see these skills become much more important, as they're eroding from our process of growing up and we're lacking them, I think that's another reason why, investments in these areas are pretty much paramount to being successful.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. This week we have Derek Parry. Derek is the founder and executive director at Code 180. Listeners of the show have heard us talk a little bit about Code 180. I'm on the advisory board for their team, and basically what they do is train non-technical people on technical skills, primarily the fundamentals of web development and computer programming in 180-minute blocks. So it's a really cool program for people who may not have a traditional background in web programming or any other computer science type background, and a way for them to get sort of brought up to speed quickly in just this 180 minutes. It's a really cool program. Both Mike and I have actually taken the course, which has been really cool. And Derek and I have had a number of great conversations about the product, and we're really excited to talk about it. So without any further ado, allow me to introduce Derek Parry.
Sure.
And that's where... Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, I was just going to ask. So at this point, you're in law, and you're sort of have taken it upon yourself to do this web programming and things like that. But where does the entrepreneurial bit come from? Have you always found yourself to be kind of entrepreneurial, or because not only did you sit down and teach yourself web programming, but you are starting a business. You built this startup. How does all that manifest?
Yeah, so I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always liked to start and create things. In high school, started the high school drum line that wasn't there beforehand, and in undergraduate school, started having different business ideas percolate around in my mind. Sure. And I think it just comes from the enjoyment of creating something, taking something that didn't exist in the world before and having an impact on the world in some sort of meaningful way. And so it's been a goal of mine for a long time, before going to law school, before starting to practice at a firm, to someday start creating my own business or startup,
that's really
whatever.
Cool. They just feel a little bit separate, the guy who wants to go work at the law firm versus the guy that wants to start a business. They don't seem like the same world.
Yeah.
But I suppose there's a lot of parallels, that you learn while you're going through school and all that stuff that contribute to entrepreneurial knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So I guess continue with your story. Sorry, we keep interrupting.
No, you're good. You're good.
The walk down memory lane.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead, Michael.
2 years in, you're working on this software for the clerks. Did you finish it? Did it come to fruition, or was it kind of like a...
Yeah, so we built out an MVP, started generating revenue, but then the three founders of InstaClerk, we all got good jobs after law school. I had a clerkship lined up on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals with the judge there, and the opportunities that we had after law school just weren't they were big enough that it didn't make sense to say no to those and continue on with InstaClerk. So we had a good experience with it and kind of wound it down.
But it was up and going and functioning at one point?
Yeah, it was.
Cool.
Yeah, we had a number of attorney clients that we were helping with research and things. And so for me, though, it was really valuable and gaining that experience of what does it feel like to start growing a company and do the sales and the distribution and all of that. But then that's where I picked up the skills in technology that I did, becoming a self-taught programmer. And by the time I got, after my clerkship on the Ninth Circuit, when I started practicing with a law firm, I was part of their mergers and acquisitions group, and they found out that I was a self-taught programmer. And so anytime that we had license agreements come in or things that were specific to software or data privacy, things like that, they would send it my way. And so I kind of naturally started developing a practice in technology law, so to speak.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show and another exciting week here at Eggs. This week we have a exciting guest. His name's Frank Cottle. He's a timeless futurist with primary expertise on the future of work, which for anybody who listens to this show know that's kind of a hot topic around here. He's founder and CEO of Alliance Virtual Offices. He's a really experienced business leader and an engaging speaker who will appeal to listeners of all ages and backgrounds, from Gen Z to boomers all over the globe. From his home and sometimes his co-working center in Southern California, Frank will offer enlightening insights and on a huge range of topics, including investment banking, finance, commercial real estate, workplace technology, and most importantly, the future of work and co-working. He's also a bit of a pro in windsurfing and cycling and some other fun things, so maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Anyway, he's here with us. He's happy to share his visionary insights and experiences to help listeners explore fresh perspectives on business, lifestyle, and new ways of working. Everyone, welcome to the show, our guest, Frank Cottle.
I grew up in an entrepreneurial family with a serial entrepreneur dad who had built a number of companies quite successfully. And so when it came time for me to create a career, the concept of working for someone else instead of with someone else or with a team or on my own, which I've always kind of been sort of a lone wolf, I couldn't understand it. I always felt that college education, at least that I had, was always teaching you to go to work for IBM or something.
Yeah.
And that just didn't work for me. For me, college was a time when you have to learn how to make decisions. And if you can do that one thing, learn how to make decisions well, then your time spent in school was well worthwhile.
Now, you shared a story on another podcast that I checked out yesterday about your dad and commodities and Ship It. Can you talk about that?
We were in the food production distribution business, and we had cold storage facilities in Los Angeles, amongst other things. And my dad would speculate in the commodities market primarily with fresh foods or frozen foods, fryers, roasters, pork bellies, things of that nature. And whenever he would go one way in the market, he'd buy something short. Well, then if it turned long, he would just say, ship it. And it always threw people off. They'd say, wait a second, we're talking like the 10 carloads of pork belly. Carloads being a 160,000 pound freezer container in a train car. And he'd say, yeah. So, and then he'd just sit on it until the market turned again.
And then he'd sell it himself.
Then he'd sell it himself, right. And we were fortunate in that we had large institutional customers for the company, the school systems, prison systems, U.S. Army, big tour cruise lines and things of that nature. So the volume, it was a low margin, but high volume business.
There you go.
And we worked in, quarter of a cent, half cent a pound increments for margin sometimes.
Oh, wow.
But in the millions of pounds. So it
works out.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so let's get back to your story a little bit and just talk about the move from yachting and all this fun entrepreneurial stuff that you were doing and all the lessons you learned. And kind of you began to transition into this world of executive offices and things like that. Can you just talk about kind of that move? Because they don't seem super related outside of just being entrepreneurial.
Well, actually, when I was in the yachting business, I'm here from Newport Beach, and a lot of people in Newport Beach at the time, a lot of my clients were in residential and commercial real estate development. And I looked at that business, and we started actually in the mid 70s in residential apartment buildings, buying apartments, refurbishing the complexes, and then sitting on them and flipping them really.
Okay.
And spinning up into larger projects and larger projects. And I found, honestly, that I didn't like that business. It was too management intensive on little things. It was really kind of painful. Even though we were fairly large and had a management company and everything, I wasn't out necessarily fixing toilets or anything like that, but it was a pretty good business. And I just decided to move over to the commercial side as an investment, and then got intrigued with the concepts of shared workspace, executive suites, land banking, things of that nature, and decided that I had sailed and hung out on the yachting scene long enough, and that it was time for me, as my dad said, it was time for me to put my long pants on. Which was kind of interesting considering at the time we had the largest yacht brokerage in the world.
Right.
So that was pretty long pants business.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that seems like pretty long pants to me.
But, for him, it was, nope, you're still playing on boats.
Right.
So we started in, call it 1980, with a land banking theory of buying property, buying a piece of dirt on the edge of a large commercial development, with additional entitlement, meaning if we planned to put up a 50,000 foot building, we had the right with the land to build 500,000 feet.
Wow.
And the key to that kind of a theory is always, well, how do you afford to buy the land, hold on to it for the 6 or 8 or 10 years that it takes for the location to mature to where it's time to build a larger building on it? And we discovered these funny little things called executive suites, which back in the late 70s, early 80s were brand new. And we determined that we could generate the most amount of revenue with the smallest amount of bricks and mortar to sit on the biggest piece of land with the greatest entitlement that we could hold for 10 years by building buildings that had executive suites. We're focused on executive suites.
Okay.
So between 1980 and 1990, we built a portfolio across California, Arizona, and Texas of those kind of buildings.
So didn't you do something like you would build one every 110 days and then you'd flip it, and you did that for 10 years?
Yes, for 10 years we did it, but we didn't flip the buildings real quick. We held on to the buildings as long as possible and really sold the portfolio at the end of the 10-year period.
Okay.
We were going through quite a development phase, and it was quite interesting. And it was also quite exhausting, because we built across California, Arizona, and Texas. So there's a lot of moving parts there.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool though. And, I mean, based on the time frame you're talking about, I think that was a pretty innovative thing to be doing. It's becoming more and more commonplace, this idea of co-working and renting an executive suite and things like that. But I mean, it really seems like you're on the cutting edge of that kind of idea.
Well, actually, at times the bleeding edge, I think.
Yeah.
The cutting edge is always a little bit bloody, and we learned a lot. We made some terrible mistakes in our first 4 or 5 years. We way overdeveloped the properties, particularly in terms of technology. I'm looking at your guys' video images, and I'll ask you, where were you in 1980?
Right.
I was just a bouncing baby boy in 1980.
Yeah, in 1980, PCs didn't exist. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how far things have come.
In our centers, we put together in the first year a joint venture with Bell Labs to basically have the first business facility that simultaneously transmitted both voice and data over 4-pair twisted cable. We built a custom, what was called then a MUX box, which was what you'd call today a router, that joined voice and data, and we put in big digital switches and big mini computers, and we put touchscreen terminals on every desk that was interconnected with the central service core. So things that were way beyond people's understanding of even how to use.
Yeah.
We were the first commercial installation of ISDN in a joint venture with GTE, their smart part concepts. So we've always pushed technology as part of our business model, and sometimes way too far in advance, where we had to explain to everyone, hey, look, this is how it really works. I mean, people were using telexes back then. and here we had touchscreen technologies and
Well, yeah, no, that's it.
some data.
I mean, it really is, how amazing things are. I mean, nowadays when you're looking for a co-working space, like great Wi-Fi is about all anybody will promise you. But from just the the little laptop computer, like in our case, we're running multiple cameras, multiple audio setups. We're running all this stuff off of just a couple little machines. We've got 10 times the technology packed into this laptop. Yet you guys were doing this, 30 years ago.
40 years ago.
40 years ago, I guess.
40 years
yeah, that's
ago.
right. I turned 39 next month, so yeah, no, I'm acutely aware.
Yeah. So you were just a twinkle in your parents' eye.
Yes, but acutely aware of 40 years ago, all of a sudden. Hey everybody, welcome to Eggs. This week we have Jennifer Weiss. She's an orthopedic surgeon specializing in pediatrics and sports. She also, as you may have gathered by Jennifer, is also a woman, although in today's society you got to be careful. So this makes her part of only 6% of female orthopedic surgeons in the U.S. Her goal is to help aspiring female surgeons find their way in medicine and become successful and encourage more people to take up the field of orthopedics. She's a mother of 3 and has a million little pearls, tips, and tricks to integrate family, work, self-care, and all that good stuff, balancing all those along with relationships, patients, friends, and colleagues, etc. So without any further ado, allow me to introduce Jennifer Weiss.
Yeah, so before we get down that route, though, let's do just kind of a brief overview of where you went to school, how you got into orthopedics, why you chose that, and maybe even just a overview of what orthopedics entails for us laymen here. I had to Google it.
No, fair enough. I was waiting for that question to lead off. So I'll start off by saying that an orthopedic surgeon, we are surgeons that take care of musculoskeletal problems. So broken bones, torn ligaments, sports injuries. The most common surgery I do, for instance, is an ACL reconstruction on kids, meaning when kids tear their knee up playing sports, I'm the one who goes and does a surgery for them.
That was actually my next question. What's the most common?
Yeah. So that's what I do. Going way back when I was in kindergarten, I will tell you that my answer when you used to go around the circle and say, what are you going to do when you grow up? My dad was an orthopedist. So I would say I'm going to be, number 1, a ballerina, of course. Of course. And number 2, an orthopedic surgeon. And they were both going to happen in my mind. And I do know actually a couple of women who are or were ballerinas and then orthopedic surgeons. And so they're definitely not. I was going to say,
it's not too late.
Correct. I could also be a ballerina at the age of 47. That would be amazing. But what happened was, as I grew older and saner, I said, heck no, I'm not going to be a doctor. My father is way busier with work than I ever want to be. And then I said, well, maybe I'll be a doctor, but I'm certainly not going to be a surgeon. And then as I went through medical school, what happens in medical school is the first 2 years you're in the classroom. And then at least this is historically, things are changing a bit. And then when I was in medical school, the last 2 years were clinical, meaning you got to go out on the floor and learn from actual doctors and see patients and stuff. So as I went through my rotations, I recognized that I really liked surgery. So I said, okay, great, I'm going to be a surgeon, but I'm not going to be an orthopedist because I don't want to be around men all the time in that crazy sort of all-male club. And then I did my orthopedic rotation because I had to. It was mandatory in the rotations that I had chosen, and I fell in love with it. And my father was just gloating, just incredibly during that time of my life. But I was definitely not I wasn't the sort of person that wanted a life to be encircled by all men. And so what's interesting is within orthopedic surgery, the field within orthopedic surgery that has more men, and we're up to almost 20%. So we think it's really good in pediatric orthopedics and in kids orthopedics. So when I chose to be a pediatric orthopedist, which happened after doing 5 years of orthopedic residency, I chose it, I thought, for a number of reasons. But when I go back now with my brain, I think, you know what, I think I wanted to have a couple women around me at least. So that's kind of the orthopedic bent. You asked me about school. I grew up in New Jersey, and I went to a beloved school from K through 12 called the Pingree School. I loved it. And then I went to Williams College, which is a liberal arts school in Massachusetts. I went to medical school at Mount Sinai in New York City, and then I did my residency in Texas and Houston.
Hey, my brother-in-law is there right now. He's going through residency. He's a hematologist. Works with blood disorders.
Is he at Baylor?
I honestly don't know, but he's in residency in Houston right now. So, and my sister has 3 kids and trying to juggle that while he's doing that. So I can relate with your story.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, that's a very cool field.
Yeah.
And Houston's a very cool place. The medical center is amazing. So, and then I came out to Los Angeles.
Well, I don't blame you for that. You got, coastal climate out there. Hey, so talk to us a little bit about, and you kind of alluded to it in your conversation. I mean, obviously, I think it's pretty well known that, the medical field in general is sort of male dominated. Can you talk a little bit about, so you did decide to kind of push through that wall. You did decide to kind of, navigate those seas of testosterone, I guess. But how did you, I guess, kind of know to do that? Or how did you feel okay to do that? Because I think that, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, obviously I can't really speak for the women out there, but I sort of feel like that might become, or sort of look like a wall too big to overcome, or something that's not worth fighting. And maybe they don't feel like they can get into the medical field, or maybe, pursue another path for fear of getting involved with that sort of scene. Can you talk about, I guess, what it took inside you to find your way through and sort of contribute to the female population in medicine?
Absolutely. I think at the beginning of all of this, there were definitely a few years of ignorance is bliss. So, now a little more than 50% of graduating medical students in the U.S. are women. At the time that I was in medical school, we were still the minority, but my medical school classroom was filled with strong women. And so I did not feel like the unicorn that I was going to become at that time whatsoever. And I also, I mentioned my father. My father was a physical giant. He was 6'6". He was a well-known orthopedic surgeon throughout the New York, New Jersey area. And he was well ahead of his time, a supporter of the he for she. And he trained a couple of women residents. He was the chair of the department in New Jersey. And he would bring, when he had a woman in his program, he would just bring her around. And I didn't recognize at the time how sort of manipulative that was for me. But I saw whatever women were in orthopedics in this country, as well as underrepresented minorities. My father would seek out, my dad was a big white guy. So he would seek out people of color and bring them to dinner. And he really just wanted us and the kids in our family to see that it wasn't such a sort of white male dominated society in medicine, even though it was at that time, and still is.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, just given how progressive that is. I mean, now, sort of in modern times, this is becoming a much more popular idea, and people seem to be making efforts to try and solve some of the problems of the past. But to have been doing that in his practice early on is really, visionary.
Yeah, and if he were alive, he would be just gloating right now, because we did not we didn't appreciate that when we were growing up. We were just like, oh yeah, Dad's bringing someone else to dinner, and he was kind of goofy, even though he was brilliant, and we didn't recognize that was visionary. Now I do.
Yeah, he would have a lot of "I told you so" moments right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there was that. I am, you can't see me on the phone, but I'm myself almost 6 feet tall. So I'm not a shrinking flower in terms of being petite. Now, there are lots of petite women going into orthopedics today. There should be, there can be, there will be more. But at the time that I did it, there was a little bit of, oh, Jen's applying to be an orthopedic surgeon, but she doesn't really count as a girl because she's big. And the other woman that I was friends with in my class at Mount Sinai who went into orthopedics, who was phenomenal, her name is Suzanne Miller, and she's in Boston. And she was also a very strong, she had been a bodybuilder actually before medical school. So there was this well, if you're going to be a woman, at least you have to have a lot of muscles. And there was, and why and how did I did I take that leap at the time? I have to credit my dad. And then I think what happened for me is I started to be supported by a lot of men around me. I didn't focus too much on being a woman at first. But let me tell you, in Houston in the mid to late 90s, there were some moments that were, I don't know how I got through them. And unfortunately, as you know, kind of in the Me Too era, I'm hearing some of these moments from younger women that are in orthopedics, and all that I know and all that I can do is to say, I'm here, I'm an ear, let's work together to change this. It was a definite ignorance is bliss at the beginning.
Well, have you found or have you observed, I guess, you know, you're saying especially now that, you know, it's about half and half men to women coming out of medical school. Is there some, I guess, attrition or something that comes along? Like, I mean, because if you're one of only 6%, like, I mean, clearly not every woman who graduates is becoming a surgeon. Like, is there, how come or why are people sloughing off along the way?
Right. So that's so interesting. So I've been doing a bunch of work looking at the percentages of women in a bunch of different fields. So women are more likely to become primary care physicians, pediatricians, internists, family practice physicians, OBGYNs are more women than men now. And then there are some fields that are still mostly men. So, for instance, anesthesiology is about 60% men. Emergency medicine is definitely more than half men. And then you get into the surgery field, and general surgery is definitely still more men than women. And then there are some subspecialties. Orthopedics, I'm not proud to say, is the worst. We have the lowest amount of women, the lowest percentage, but we've got some partners that are nearby. Interventional radiology, which are people that are the ones that when you have not you hopefully, but when someone has a heart attack and they have a clot in their heart, the interventional radiologists are the ones that kind of come in and save the day in the middle of the night and sneak out these blood clots to save people's lives. Those people are very unlikely to be women. I think they're at 12%. Neurosurgeons are about 10%. But here's the kicker, urologists. So women would rather be urologists, which is doctors for penises. They would rather do that than be an orthopedic surgeon in today's day and age. And that's one of those statements that I'll make publicly that just opens people's eyes like, wow, what do we need to do to change this?
Well, it's
because half of our patients in orthopedics are women, and half of urologist patients are not women.
So is there anything that stands out to you that would be a deciding factor of why that's the case?
I think we all want to do something that we see somebody that looks like us and acts like us and have a role model, and we're not giving that well enough to young women. And I think that it's a cultural shift, that it really still feels like a boys' club in many ways. And if you
orthopedics in general or just surgery in general?
Orthopedics more than surgery, but even still in surgery, when you are such a minority in a room, it's interesting and different. And that navigating that boys club, sometimes I feel like there was a brief stint where I was a manager of a boys lacrosse team in high school, and sometimes that's what I feel like when I walk into a room of orthopedics.
Well, and it's funny, like, I think that this is to your point, but it seems like, and, you know, this is just being stereotypical or sort of, you know, current society standings, but a lot of the positions you mentioned that are a little bit more female dominant, where there are more women in the field, at least from outsider with my very limited knowledge of medicine, seem to be more like caretaking positions, like where, you know, more motherly, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that, to your point, is because sort of culturally we've set it up that way. And so to see people like you doing orthopedic work, if that, you know, doesn't give women sort of, you know, opens up the boundaries for other women so that they understand, oh, I could be an orthopedist too. It just hadn't occurred to me because I hadn't seen it done before.
That's absolutely right. And we have a really exciting moment happening in March, which is for the very first time, our Orthopaedic Academy will have a woman president. Oh. And I am so excited to shout that from the rooftops. I am the chair of our communications cabinet for our American Orthopaedic Association, and Christy Weber, who will be our first president, was actually also the first woman that I worked with way back when I was a resident in Houston. And it's going to be a huge moment for us to say, you know what, not only can a woman do this, a woman can be in charge of this.
Hey everybody, welcome to Eggs. Today's guest is Jamal Collins, aka Jay Working. I met him briefly, or I should say he came into my awareness at the often discussed WMC Fest in Cleveland, where Jamal was a keynote speaker. He is a well-known graphic designer, speaker, and perennial podcast guest, but he's probably better known for the amazing work he does in his community. After years of decline and hardship in Cleveland, Jamal set out to create a program that offers graphic design training to underprivileged children in the hardest hit parts of town. A Cleveland native, he's decided to dedicate his life to rebuilding the city that he loves and giving opportunity to those who might not otherwise have it. He's a truly inspirational figure, and we're grateful to have him on the show. Ladies and gents, let's give a warm welcome to designer, educator, mentor, and community advocate, Jamal Collins.
Thank you.
So speaking of the kids, talk about that for a little bit. How'd you get involved? You work with the Boys and Girls Club. You teach design. I think on your website you call it Creative Kids.
Yes.
Can you break that down for us? How you got into that, what motivated you to do that, and just kind of give us a brief overview.
Yeah, sure. So what happened is that the economy tanked and that left me out of work, and I was searching for clues, trying to be a designer. It wasn't working out, and I was suffering from this for a long time. I was unemployed for 5 years. And
wow.
Yeah. So I had read a little article, like, people might not want to hire you if they see a large gap. You know how you search for stuff in Google and it just kind of break your heart. So I started volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club, and I saw an opportunity to teach. And then was in a tough area. It's kind of outside my comfort zone. And then, I just did it. So I have no teaching background at all. And this area was rough and tough. So I guess it was a good initiation to get me started, going. I seen some consultants coming in, and I was like curious how that worked, because I don't think they really knew I was a designer. I think they just thought I was an artist. Or maybe they knew, but they didn't know to the extent. Yeah. So we had an event for the kids, and I did some posters pro bono for corporate, and they was kind of like, wow, we know you could do this. So at the same time, I kind of mentioned, like, I seen some IMAX, let me, put the Creative Cloud on there and teach these guys something that they can really, value from it. So
what time is this? How long ago?
It's been 4 years since I did that. So I only worked as an art instructor for a year, and after that I resigned and came back as a consultant. And at the time, I think I was moving at 2 locations, and it kind of grew to 7. So I average about 100 kids a month. A lot of the stuff I do kind of, raise some more eyebrows in other places. So I'm at another school district at Richmond High School. It's a smaller district, but they have a cool program for coders for the middle school. So I kind of teach them graphic design with the coders.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I teach junior college during the day, cinematography. Some of my videos on my vlog kind of got some attention from some professor at one of my professors at Tri-C. So that's Cuyahoga Community College. So I do that, and also do some workshops at a place called PNC Fairfax. If you could catch me, I do one-on-one, with kids too. So parents want to get some one-on-one training. So we might meet at a coffee shop or something, and we get it in.
So can you talk about the Boys and Girls Club, what it is, how kids, I have a roommate that I think was pretty involved in the Boys and Girls Club when he was a kid, but I never really, it wasn't part of my life. I don't know anything about it. Is there like an age limit where you can start coming, and then you just kind of come after school and hang out while your parents are at work? And
yeah, definitely. So it's different locations spread out. Some of them have school sites, so they're within the school. Some of them have their own locations. It's an after school program, and I don't know how early it is, but I think school agers all the way up to 18. So they have different brackets. They have homework support. They have meals. They have activities. They have stuff for, the boys, something called like Passport to Manhood. And then they have programming coming in. Like, so we have a band program, we have ballet, and we have, me doing graphic design, and they may have like some hip hop dance, African drums, things like that. So, they go on, a lot of field trips, they have a lot, it's a big, probably one of the largest nonprofits. So they have huge partners like the Cleveland Browns and Indians. So they get their teeth cleaned at the Cleveland Indians Stadium and all this stuff like that. So it's amazing stuff that they could do. They got college programs that they could, send kids to college. And we have me coming in and giving them something more than just, crayons and markers, really giving them something tangible that they could turn into a workforce opportunity. And
TV and saying, hey.
So I've been in there for a while, so I could kind of talk about some of the issues. So
where does the funding come from like this?
Government grants, donations, and fundraising.
Okay.
Yeah. So since it's a large scale nonprofit, they have, high salary people, they have buses and, bus drivers, so they can go after the big dollars to get the big dollars to do stuff.
So this is a nationwide thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that sounds really cool. Well, and I guess in a city that's suffering like Cleveland, the Boys and Girls Club and programs like yours are, really great places to keep kids off the street and help sort of give them some positive direction in life. I was watching one of your videos of sort of just, you were just driving through parts of East Cleveland. And I mean, I actually commented to Mike while we were sitting here watching it. I was like, this is an American city. Like, this is middle of the United States. And I mean, it looks like war torn, it looks like third world out there. Yeah. And so for these kids, they have to even if they have a good family and good everything at home, just having to walk through that on the way to get to somewhere or whatever is, really troubling. And so I think it's really, notable what you're doing, to give back to your community in that way. I guess, is there something in your life that you could point to that sort of led you in the direction of community service? Like, I mean, you mentioned that you were a designer yourself, but there's clearly a switch. Like, was there something in your upbringing or something that sort of gave you that itch to help community?
Yeah, I think the main thing is I know what I needed. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have no Boys and Girls Club, and I kind of lacked a lot of advice. We kind of was just learning as we go. And that could be bad, learning where learning from your mistakes, because your mistake could land you in prison.
Yeah.
Or land you, strung out on drugs. Like some of it, we was dibbling, dabbling in this stuff. So we definitely needed extra support outside of, the parents. Definitely. Yep. So, like I was making crazy mistakes in college. Like this is, retarded for me to be doing some of the stuff I was doing in college. Like, so I feel like if we would have had some advisors to point us like, you guys should be running a company, starting a company now type of thing. So these are the discussions I have. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good. No, so let me ask you then. Sorry, I get excited and then I start going, ooh, I have a question. So one of the things, and I think it's what we're tiptoeing around, but this is something I've asked a number of different CEOs and high-level executives and stuff that have come on the show, as well as some founders and things like that of different companies. And I think you're sort of alluding to this, so maybe it's just an extension of what you're talking about. But I wanted to talk to you about that importance of mentoring. So you said that part of what you think sort of took you in the direction of helping out all these kids was that you were missing out on something like that. But was there ever a point in your life, or was there a person you could point to, sort of like, the guy that sort of convinced you that college was the way to go? Like, do you have mentors in your own life who have sort of helped you out with this, or in your design career, or, in your community service work?
I think the most my best mentors is the ones I look at online. So, I guess it's really no different. But yeah, I do have a couple, guys that have successful businesses I could talk to. I got a lot of relationships now because of the work I've done and the exposure I get. So it's kind of easy for me to make phone calls. So I try to call people and get advice as much as possible. But, I kind of look at the, forefathers of business and read a lot of books and look at a lot of videos on, creative thinkers. So, I try to get as much inspiration from that as possible. And then I can just, take what I learned and pass it down to these guys type of thing. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't know why, but like in my own life, I've never been particularly good about having mentors. But like as I reach out and I start to meet more people and learn more people, I see kind of what I've been missing out on. So I think that it was an interesting point that mentorship, even though maybe at the time you didn't have it in your own life, that you felt compelled to give that to other kids. That was the thing that you could have used when you were growing up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of had that yearning feeling in myself. Like it was always kind of inside of me like, dang, I wish I could have somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially in corporate, like I ain't had, like I said, my people was blue collar. So they ain't know nothing about emails and, dealing with the politics of the corporate life. So I'm like, man, I'm kind of stuck here or lost or couldn't get my way out because I was there for 10 years.
Even just a basic business, like filing the paperwork to set up a business and then doing the taxes and then doing all that stuff that you just, having someone that's already been there and done that, it makes all the difference in the world. Just having someone you can ask questions to. Exactly. I can't even imagine trying to do, that without even, having access to the internet because it wasn't around at the time, and B, not having anyone to talk to about it, so, I guess props for getting as far as you have without that.
Yeah, thanks.
I think you're right. And, of course, now in today's day and age, with technology and stuff, maybe these mentors and people that folks look up to are more accessible than ever. You can hit them up on Twitter or Instagram, or, whatever. So maybe you have better access to somebody who might be important to you or might be beneficial to you as a mentor. But yeah, I definitely think it's something that kids should be engaging with even at younger ages. I think the purpose of Boys and Girls Club is more to help underprivileged, but I think really most kids could benefit from, those types of programs and after school activities, versus just going home and getting on Fortnite for 4 hours.
But the problem is that they had the Boys and Girls Club on Fortnite. So, I'm trying to come in there. I'm just being honest, man. So I try to come in there and try to, wake them up because, the thing is, and I get it, it's after school. So I talk about this a lot. They've been in school all day. So we got this after school. We got, like I said, school sites. So some of them don't even leave. The Boys and Girls Club have a relationship with the school. So at 3:00, they just transition to some other rooms in the school and they're there from 3 to 7. So they don't want to do any type of studying or learning outside of that type of thing. So they just want to play basketball. But, go ahead.
You find that the topic, design and, if they have like a coding program or something like that, do you find that certain kids are more, compelled to be involved because of the graphic design aspect of it versus like if, they're just there and have to do math homework?
Heck yeah. Yeah. The nerdy, geeky kids, but the sports guys, they want to just play ball.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when I pull them in the corner, I'm telling them, like, you still got to create content. Like, I don't care what it is. Like, you should be creating content. You have to. Like, it's social networks. Like, I talk about this. There's no resumes and saying to whom it may be concerned. Them days is over. They want to pull you up and see if you are what you say you are. So guys need to really, still poke their heads in there and understand how to do video and understand marketing. And, so it's still, it's still urgency.
That's the one problem in Cleveland. Well, until recently anyways, you had LeBron.
I was just going to bring that up.
Because of LeBron, everybody wants to be a baller now. So,
right.
Everybody wants to
but
play
you
ball.
also look at LeBron and you see what he's doing with this college.
Yeah, it's awesome.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? I haven't really done much research on it. It looks like free tuition, free everything, and
Yeah, it's awesome. I salute him. I wish I could do it. I want to get to that point.
yeah, I think it's cool that he has the funding and the finances to put something like that together, and he's actually doing that.
Yeah.
I think there's like a GPA cutoff and all sorts of other like criteria just to get into it, but just the fact that he's putting that out there, props to him. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I salute him. I definitely do. Just something about giving back. You know what I'm saying? It's like my life changed when I stopped kind of worrying about me and working my way up the corporate ladder and being a designer. And I just started giving back and kind of showing that connection. I think that's what it is. I just show a connection that I make with them. And, you could feel it. It's something you could feel. So, I try to be authentic and genuine with what I'm doing. And, I try to show a lot of gratitude towards people. I think that's the number one thing that I didn't have at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm kind of following status quo, work my way up the ladder, do as I told, follow this manual, these brand guidelines, make no waves, because that's kind of, that was what we were promised. What we were promised was a pension at the end of the day. So that's what, my parents, I was born in 1970. So this was a little bit after Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers was still around. So, to come out of civil rights and actually have a chance at, a piece of the pie, that's what we wanted to do. So we didn't want to shake up and make any waves in at the workforce. So I was kind of raised off of that. So that's kind of my philosophy when I came into PricewaterhouseCoopers. But the thing is that we have to shake up. We have to, rattle the cage, because that's the only way we're going to be indispensable. So this is what I learned now is, standing out, not really caring, doing stuff outside my comfort zone.
We lost him.
This is the success I've had.
Okay. Hey, Jamal, we lost you for just 1 second. I don't know what happened. Just a little internet glitch or something.
Oh, okay. I was on a roll.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It was just like the last little bit of what you just said there. We
Maybe
couldn't
the last
hear.
couple sentences.
Yeah.
I was kind of talking about just staying safe and keeping our heads down was very practical, getting a piece of the pie. But that's no longer the case. You got to stand out. And the only way to be indispensable is to, go outside your comfort zone and, do stuff that I guess I was talking about rattling in the cage or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and it's true, this idea. So in your case, just to sort of bring it back to your story, you mentioned, you were out of work for 5 years and then you were looking for something new. And basically you had to shift gears. You had to get out of your sort of comfort bubble and start doing something else. And so how much of the time that you spend with your kids, you're mentoring them, you're teaching them a hard skill, but how much time do you dedicate to things like, starting a business or, changing their mindsets or, realizing that they can really be anything they want to be, they can't be held back by whatever. Like how much of your mentorship is just that kind of stuff, trying to set up good frames of mind?
I think I want to say 70%.
Yes.
When I kind of learned a lot by videotaping my class. When I started videotaping my class, I could kind of see, my style of teaching and kind of the life lessons that they need, because it's they dealing with grades, they still dealing with home life, they're dealing with peer pressure and, girls and guys and all of this stuff. And, I could kind of see some of the stuff they're doing when I come in there. You could just look at the YouTube, the algorithm. And if all I see is Fortnite and Beyonce dances and all of this stuff, I know that their attention is in the wrong area.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. I don't think they have none. They're just totally consumers. A lot of them, they don't create anything. They just look at stuff and play games. That's it.
Do you think the social aspect of like Facebook and Instagram and everything, do you think that's kind of putting like a barrier in between like actually learning? Like, I could see it going both ways. I could see like people seeing stuff on like their Instagram, like how did they make this video? How did they do that? And be curious and want to try and replicate it, or people just, you know, wasting time and having no interest in any of it. They just want to be the consumer, like you said.
They want to just be the consumer. I don't think they understand. I kind of talk about mind hacking with the, you know, the social networks and the likes and the dopamine, you know, spikes in dopamine by this stuff. And sometimes I even get caught in it. So it's a strong pull on a teenager. He doesn't know about, you know, logging off or, you know, looking kind of deeper into stuff. So it's just, you know, it's just awareness. Like, how do you make money on YouTube? They never had this conversation with anybody.
They never.
Yeah. So monetizing and looking at analytics and marketing and A/B testing and all of this stuff. The thing is, they don't know the urgency. That's number one. If they're single parent homes and they're struggling already, they don't know that they need to get themselves together quick. This is another thing. I think another problem is that they don't know that they can make money right now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, set up a PayPal account, show your talents. People will hire you at any age. You just got to show your talent.